From the Russ Center for Media in downtown Cape Girardeau, welcome to Focus on Southeast, a program on issues and events impacting the campus of Southeast Missouri State University. I'm Dan Woods with KRCU Public Radio. Southeast Missouri State saw growth in the enrollment of international students this fall, with more than 1,000 students now studying on the campus. Dr. Kevin Timlin is the Executive Director of International Education and Services at Southeast. He's here to talk about the growth of the program and more. Hey, Kevin, good to see you.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so tell us a little bit about your office first and the program and what's offered here.
Sure. So the International Education and Services Office it's considered a comprehensive international office. What that means is, in essence, that most things having to do with international will in some way, shape, or form go through our office. But more specifically, we are responsible for international student recruitment and admissions. We're responsible for international student services. So when a student is here and even after they graduate, there's a number of services that we provide and support for them. We also, to a certain extent, do study abroad. That's getting CMO students to do part of their academic work at partner institutions or some opportunity abroad. And then we also have a CEA accredited intensive English program, and that's for students who have a non-English background, giving them the opportunity to learn English at an academic level that's sufficient for admission into an academic program. So all of those things and whatever else you can think of that may be international, we tend to get emails or walk-in or calls.
Pretty much a one-stop shop for anything to do.
That's the idea. That's the idea.
So how many countries are represented at Southeast?
Right now, I want to say we have about 66 different countries. And you think about that, there's a little over 200 countries in the world. There's different ways to recognize a country and how people consider those. But I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out that roughly 1 out of every 3 countries in the world is represented here in Cape Girardeau. So we're very proud of that diversity.
So what percentage of the student body is international students now?
Right now, we're right at 10%. So I think if I recall the 4-week census enrollment for the university, we're right at 10,000 students, and that's, I believe that's head count. We are at 1,060 or so international. So this is, as far as I'm aware, the highest percentage of international students as part of our student body. So we're very proud of that as well.
Yeah, there had been a drop-off, I guess, during pandemic and other things, and so things have shifted, I guess, back now the other direction. So what's caused that? What's been behind the growth?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different things that, as a nation, so it's kind of interesting. Every year there's the Institute of International Education. They put out what's called the Open Doors Report. That is the most comprehensive report on international student enrollment, as well as study abroad numbers going abroad. So just kind of international student mobility. And through the Open Doors Report, you can go back to World War II and see that in the United States, up until 9/11, the number of international students studying in the U.S. had increased year by year by year by year. So after 9/11, there was a little bit of a dip, but the mid-2000s and the 2010s saw exponential growth in international enrollment, at least through 2016 in the U.S. And that really mirrored what we do at Southeast. You know, we've kind of had, it was incremental until about the 90s, and then it really started to grow. But 2016, things started to change a little bit politically. The situation with visas and the State Department had an impact on things. COVID obviously had a big effect on things. And the Open Doors report for 21-22 is coming out next Monday, but we're kind of expecting, again, our numbers to reflect what we see in Open Doors, and what's happening nationwide is happening here, that there was issues that we had getting international students here, but by and large, we've really rebounded. I think that really strategically what the university did that's had the biggest impact on our numbers, you know, apart from the support that we do in the recruitment and things like that, is it's the Applied Computer Science Master's Program. Applied Computer Science and Cybersecurity, most of our growth is in those areas, and those are incredibly popular master's degree programs for international students. So, you know, things are happening. One of the things that was in the late 2010s, State Department they lost a lot of staffing, and it was really hard for people to get visas to come and apply for a student visa. So when for an international student to study here at SEMO, they have to be admitted, they have to show to us that they've got proof of English proficiency, they have to show to us that they've got their own funds to cover the cost of education. Mm-hmm. And if they don't do those, they can't get admitted. And once they get admitted, they have to apply for a student visa or an F1 visa. So when the State Department contracted, there were fewer opportunities for people to get those visa interview or application slots, and that really affected our student population as well as international student population across the world. So now things are rebounding. There's more visa appointments, more opportunities to get that visa to come, and with the programs, we're seeing all those things as reasons why we're rebounding.
Do you expect the growth to continue?
Well, that remains to be seen. I actually just had a meeting with the Vice President of Enrollment Management, Dr. Debbie Bilo, right before I came here today. And right now, I think we've had a lot of exponential growth in the last 2 or 3 semesters or last year and a half or so. But that was because those applied computer science and cybersecurity programs were relatively new, and so they're growing. Now they're kind of at capacity, so I don't think we have as much room to gain huge numbers again in the next couple of intakes or so, but I certainly expect the numbers to remain at a minimum consistent.
So if the applied computer science and masters, that's the top one, what would be like second and third? What are some of the other?
Well, so one of the things that also drives international students' interest in the U.S. is there's a nationwide program called Optional Practical Training, or we go by the acronyms OPT. And what OPT is if you come here as an F1 visa holder, an international student, when you graduate from the university, whether it's a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate, you have the right to stay and work in the United States for 1 year on your student visa. And the idea, it's practical training. It's kind of closing the loop on experiential learning, where you've done the classroom stuff of it, now go into the field and put it into practice and get that last part of the training. So that's a big draw. So people want the ability to work in U.S. companies and get that experience and understand the culture and things like that. But if the degree that you graduate with is recognized as a STEM program by the Department of Education, that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, you can get an additional 2 years of OPT. So that means that if our computer science graduates, mathematics, anybody in the STEM field, now they get 3 years of OPT. So, when you ask about what the popular programs are, anything with the STEM designation is something that's going to be attractive to our international student population.
Very interesting. Okay, so how do we recruit international students here at Southeast?
Well, that's the responsibility of our office. The main way, I should first of all say that when you talk to our international students and you kind of ask them, why was it that you chose Southeast? More often than not, they're going to say, I knew somebody that went here, a friend, a family member, and there's a positive word of mouth because we're really seen as an affordable type of an institution with a safe, affordable type of community. Lots of student engagement opportunities, undergraduate research. We tell international students they can come here and be a big fish in a small pond, as it were, where they get a lot of opportunities to interact with their faculty and things like that. But yeah, so sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
How do we recruit? Do you travel to? Travel to recruit? I'm just curious how we.
Well, so the word of mouth is the first and foremost way that we recruit. Other than that, we have contracted recruitment partners in several different countries around the world. So our office in the admissions side of it is really set up to deal with people once they've submitted an application, and then we kind of work with them. We don't have as much of an ability because of our staffing levels to do the marketing and hand-holding and advising people to get them interested in Southeast. So that's why we work with recruitment partners and recruitment companies, is they do the marketing in country for us. They kind of help the person, advise them on how they submit the application, and then once we get the application, we work with them. So we do have monthly newsletters, webinars, and lots of different things that we provide to those recruitment partners so that they can market us. They've got a direct line to me and our email and things like that. But we very much rely on recruitment partners across the world.
It's interesting. I mean, do you ever go and visit other places? As part of?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the international world, as well as a lot of other areas, relationship building is really important. I mentioned word of mouth. We're not going to have positive word of mouth unless we have relationships with people and they trust us and they know what the outcomes are. So we do, on occasions, with our top producing partners, go and visit them in country. They'll have fairs that we can attend and meet a lot of their students. We meet prospective students and parents and things like that. Prior to COVID, I would say that somebody in our office was responsible for maybe 6 to 8 different recruitment trips in an academic year. But since COVID, we've only been on one trip since. So, there's so much more capability with Zoom and technology now where you don't necessarily have to be in person as much. But it really is something that helps differentiate us and again, build those relationships where people feel that I trust Southeast and I trust sending my colleagues and my, customers to Southeast. So, we'll see what happens as we kind of move forward. A typical recruitment trip in the past would have been 2 weeks in duration, and we would go to maybe 2 or 3 different countries. But now with COVID and the crossing borders makes it a little bit difficult. And if you do come up with COVID and you have to quarantine for a couple of weeks, that shoots your recruitment budget right out of the water. So we're slowly putting our foot back in the water with recruitment trips. So it remains to be seen what it'll be. But so far, we're getting a lot of these numbers without those kind of in-person visits. We're hopeful that once we can do that again, we can even ramp it up a little bit more.
Yeah. Before we go, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the International Village. Tell us about that for our viewers.
So back in 2019, the Cottonwoods Treatment Facility used to have a place on campus on 1025 North Spriggs Street. They found a different place in town, so they vacated those premises. We had, back then, close to 700-800 international students, so still a very large population, and no real place for international students to call home. We had a little house, the International House behind Kent Library, that was good for offices, but we didn't have any kind of action space. It didn't really serve much of a purpose beyond administration. So when that Cottonwoods opened up, we saw a real opportunity to create an international village, which was created basically to be a hub for all things international on campus. So we do have all of our comprehensive offices there, but we've got a lot of different action spaces too. So we've got a classroom, we've got a video conferencing room, we've got a multi-purpose room with a semi-commercial kitchen that we can do lots of cultural food events there. We've got a computer lab. And again, the idea is it's a place where people can come and share and learn about culture and just kind of be the hub of all things international on campus. So we absolutely love the facility, and our student groups do presentations. We've had dances. Earlier on Tuesday night, we had a table tennis tournament, all kinds of food events. So it's really given us an opportunity to host those types of events, which are important to showcase our students and show them that we value them. But it's also bringing a lot of, it's giving them a sense of home and a home base for them. So we love having it.
Very nice. Dr. Kevin Timlin, always good to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. When we come back, Dr. Pam Parry from the Department of Mass Media will join us with information about a diversity study of the peer-reviewed journal Journalism History. You're watching Focus on Southeast. We'll be right back.
What is Southeast Missouri? Let's try this again. You are Southeast Missouri. You make Southeast Missouri what it is. And Southeast Missouri is who we are. It's in our name. It's in our past. And with you, it's our future. Welcome home.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff. like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Welcome back to Focus on Southeast. Journalism History is the oldest peer-reviewed journal on media history in America. The publication is turning 50 years old in 2024, and in anticipation of that, the journal conducted a diversity study of the first 47 years of the publication and found some interesting things. Dr. Pam Parry is the editor of the journal and a member of CMO's Department of Mass Media. She's here to tell us all about the study. Hey, Pam.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. So tell us about the journal first, I guess, then we'll talk about the study a little bit.
Okay. Well, you've said it correct. We're the oldest peer-reviewed journal in America on media history. When it began in 1974, it was a journal on journalism history, so that's its name. But now we've broadened and we are interested in advertising and public relations and broadcast, and so it's really on media history. The way it works, it's a journal produced by professors and historians of the media, and it's run and produced, and it's also the people who read it. And so when somebody wants to be published in the journal, they submit a manuscript. I send it out to a group of peer reviewers. We have almost 100 reviewers in 8 different countries, one of whom is our own Dr. Carrie Hollerbach. Oh. She reviews for the journal. Okay. And then they accept or reject or have people revise and resubmit. And so we have less than 40% acceptance rate, so it's very competitive.
Yeah. So the 50th anniversary coming up, so there was a study to look back on the past 47 years. What were some of the things that were found in this study?
Well, the staff of journalism history reports to a publications committee, so they operate like an editorial board. The editorial board did the study because we're busy putting the journal out. And the publications committee found several interesting things. For one thing, in the last 47 years, 536 people have authored an article, and there have been 727 articles. We found that about 3/4 of the articles focus on print journalism, and we found that kind of surprising because at least since the 1950s, there's been a lot of interest in broadcast, but there's not been a lot of research in this journal about that. We also found there's next to no research about public relations and advertising. We think it's because of the name. So we're in the process of trying to educate people that we cover those topics too. I think that we found that we covered gender relatively well. That journalism history has been interested in diversity since the beginning. The 4th issue, or around the 4th issue of the first year, they did a special issue just on gender. And so they've done pretty good with gender, pretty good with race, generally speaking. But they haven't done a lot combining the two. There's not been a lot of research like on black women press, that kind of thing. They've also sort of neglected the area of disability. I don't think on purpose you have to have people submit articles, but we only have like 2 out of 727 articles on disability in journalism or media. We also have had very few articles on sexual orientation. So there's some areas we discovered that we can do better at.
And I guess the idea would be going into the next 50 years to try to maybe get more people involved in submitting and try to encourage them to maybe broaden the range of topics they're discussing and talking about. Is that the idea?
Absolutely. We can't control the articles that are submitted because people have an interest, they submit it, we accept or reject. We also, as editor, and I think I'm the 8th editor, so there's a term limit when you serve as editor. you really can't put your bias in like, oh, I'm a woman, so I want a gendered article. They submit it, and we base it on the quality of the research. But we are trying to do it through an awareness campaign, and we are thinking about putting together potentially some funds to help fund some of this research. That's too early to tell you much about that. But we definitely are trying to encourage young scholars coming out of their PhD programs today to think about these areas of study that have been neglected, because that's a fertile field. And so we are hoping to encourage more scholarship in this area.
Was there anything in the study when you read it, were you surprised by anything that really jumped out at you out of these things that were talked about?
Not a great deal. There were maybe a couple little things, like they also, one of the things they studied was different periods of history. And so I was a little bit surprised that the colonial period of American history didn't have many articles in it, because that's such a rich period of media history in our country that, you know, we may not have a country without the influence and impact of the media back during the Revolutionary War. And so that period is not covered very well. We cover quite a bit. We seem to be enamored with the 2 world wars, and that period, there's a lot of research on those periods. So I was a little bit surprised by that. There aren't a lot of historians that I have read that have done the disability kind of research. There are some out there, but so that wasn't surprising, but we'd like to encourage more of that. If the young scholars come out of their PhD programs, that's a place they could really plow some new ground.
You mentioned that there was a lack of research in non-print media. It's sort of surprising that there isn't more about broadcast television and cable television news. I mean, that would be a rich area, I would think, to explore.
Yes,
too.
and we have some media historians out there at different universities, I know, who are doing books on that topic. So we need them to submit articles for the journal. So I'm not sure why that is, but that is kind of an interesting area, particularly since, you know, I don't know, at least since what, the 60s or 70s, you know, television overtook print in terms of being the king in the media world. So I'm not really sure why. We did this, sponsor a survey competition, essay competition, and we're judging that now. Every fall we run essays on a theme, and so we did do our essay competition on broadcast journalism to encourage that. So next fall, once we judge the competition, there will be some articles in the journals. So those are little things we can do to try to push it along. But yeah, that is a little bit surprising.
So whenever you are doing this, I mean, do you do a general call for a certain, you said you don't really dictate the topics, but do you ever try to guide authors in a certain direction in any way at all?
Not usually. We have tried to encourage more international presence. That's why it was just last year we added international members to our review board. How are we going to get, you know, international authors if we're not including them on the review process, and some things like that. But we simply, there's an open invitation to submit. And one of the things that I do as editor is I go to different conferences and I talk to authors. So I went to a conference in August, and my primary duty there was I just had coffee with one person after another. You know, what do you want to write? How do you want to write? And we've been sort of targeting, that's not a really good word, but we've been trying to target graduate students and encourage them to write while they're still in school, because often they think they have to graduate, become a professor, then write. So we've been trying to get graduate students to do more. And so that's part of my job. I try to encourage people to submit, but not any specific area.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes. What are some other things, other projects you're working on before we run out of time?
Well, I'm also the lead co-editor of a book series on women in American political history. One of the things I discovered when I did my doctoral program is that women have been kind of neglected in American political history in certain areas, and so we did, I wanted to do a book series on that. We've produced 5 books to date, and 2 more are coming out in 2023. They've been submitted, but they're in the process of being produced. And so I did not write those. I'm the person who me and my co-editor, we solicit authors to want to publish in this area, and then we edit the books and we work with them. And so, but that's exciting to me. We have 3 other books under contract. So at this point, we're scheduled to have 10 books come out in the series. I'm hoping to do more, but it takes time to do all these.
Have there been any topics so far that you've really been, this is really, really interesting, or this is really engaging, something that's really jumped out at you?
Well, there have been several. We had our very first book that was published was about how the media portray female politicians, and the author looked at 4 different female candidates over history, one of whom was Sarah Palin, one of whom was Victoria Woodhull, who was the first woman to ever run for president. It was a very long time ago, and a lot of people don't remember her. She also wasn't eligible to be president because she wasn't old enough, so she ran to make a point. And she couldn't vote for herself because she was in prison the day they voted. And then there are 2 other candidates, but that was a fascinating book. It was amazing how the press covered Victoria Woodhull and Sarah Palin not that differently, despite being decades and decades apart. So that was an interesting book.
Anything else? You got another minute or so we can go. If you...
Yeah, one of the books that's in process now that is going to be coming out in 2023 is authored by a man named Pete Smith. I'm very happy we have male authors in the female series. He's writing about the first women who served as political reporters at the state capitol in Mississippi. He's a professor in Mississippi. And we just got the review back. We sent them out for peer review. The review was awesome, and we're now in the process of, typesetting, all that stuff, getting the book ready.
So a lot of good things still to come. You're still working on a book on
I'm still
Roosevelt?
working on a book on Eisenhower. And the women he appointed to federal office.
That's going to be hopefully soon, right? I know you're still working on it.
I hope so. My publisher says it's past due.
All right. Well, we'll have you back when that's ready. How about that? Thanks very much, Pam. Good talking to you. Focus on Southeast is a collaboration of KRCU Public Radio and the Department of Mass Media here at Southeast Missouri State. Just a reminder that portions of these conversations will be broadcast on KRCU. You can also listen to them at krcu.org. From the Russ Center for Media, I'm Dan Woods with KRCU Public Radio. Thanks for watching. Be sure to join us next time when we focus on Southeast.